$50 million. That's what the World Cup champion takes home this summer. $50 million for one tournament. And here's the question nobody is asking right now. While everyone is watching the goals and celebrating the wins, what happens to that money? 5 years from now? 10 years from now? Because here's what the data actually shows. Most professional athletes who earn more money in 1 year than most people earn in a lifetime end up broke. And not because they were careless, not because they were stupid, because nobody taught them. The one thing that money alone can never teach you. Today, we're going to talk about that lesson, the $50 million lesson that most World Cup players never learn, and more importantly, what it means for you. This is the bigger picture. Let me give you a number. Not 50 million, a different one, 60%. That's the percentage of professional athletes who face serious financial difficulties within 5 years of retiring. 60% of people who earned more money in a single season than most people earn in an entire career. 60% broke or close to it within 5 years. Now let me give you another number, 78%. That's the percentage of NFL players who are under financial stress within 2 years of leaving the league. 2 years after earning millions. These aren't obscure statistics. These numbers have been documented, studied, written about for decades. And yet, every 4 years, a new generation of champions lifts a trophy, collects their prize money, and starts the same cycle. Here's what makes this pattern so fascinating and so relevant to everyone watching right now, and it's not about the amount. That's the part people miss. They look at these stories and think, well, if I had $50 million, I wouldn't make those mistakes. But here's what the research actually shows. The pattern repeats, regardless of the amount. Someone who struggles to manage $2,000 a month struggles to manage $20,000 a month. Someone who struggles to manage $20,000 struggles to manage $200,000. The amount changes, the behavior doesn't. Not automatically, not without something changing first, something more fundamental than the number. Here's why this matters for you. You're probably not expecting a $50 million check this summer, but you are, at some point in your life, going to encounter money that feels like more than you're used to. A raise, a bonus, an inheritance, a business that finally works. Some version of more than before. And when that moment comes, the question isn't how much. The question is, what happens next? Because here's what the athletes who kept their money did differently. Not the investment they chose, not the advisor they hired. Something that happened before any of that. Something internal. Something most people never address. Because they're too busy focusing on the external, the amount, the vehicle, the strategy, while the real variable, the one that determines everything, goes completely unexamined. In the next part of this conversation, we're going to talk about what that variable actually is. Let me tell you about a pattern, one that shows up in the stories of almost every athlete who earned significant money and lost it. It almost never happens all at once. There's no single catastrophic decision, no one moment where everything fell apart. It happens gradually, quietly, one reasonable decision at a time. Here's how it typically goes. The money arrives, more than before, much more. And the first thing that happens is that normal expands. The house gets bigger, the cars get nicer, the entourage grows, the lifestyle adjusts automatically to match the new number. Not because of greed, necessarily, because of something more human than that. Because when more money arrives, the brain interprets it as permission to finally live the way that was always imagined, the house in the neighborhood that seemed impossible, the car that was always out of reach, the ability to take care of everyone around you, family, friends, people from the old neighborhood. These aren't bad impulses, they're deeply human ones. But here's what happens when lifestyle expands to match income. Without any structure underneath it, the income is temporary, the lifestyle feels permanent. And when the income stops, or slows, or changes, the lifestyle doesn't adjust at the same speed because lifestyles don't shrink easily, they expand readily and contract painfully. Here's the second part of the pattern, the pressure. When money arrives suddenly, so does everyone who knew you before it arrived. Family members with needs, friends with opportunities, advisors with products, strangers with proposals, and saying no to the people who were there before the money is one of the hardest things a human being can do, so most don't. They say yes, repeatedly, until the yes pile outweighs the income. And the third part of the pattern, the investments that go wrong, not because the athlete was foolish, because they were inexperienced, with large amounts of money and surrounded by people who were very experienced at separating large amounts of money from inexperienced people. Bad real estate deals, business ventures that sounded solid, opportunities that came with guarantees, that turned out to mean nothing. Put these three things together, lifestyle inflation, social pressure, bad investments, and you have the complete picture of how 60% of professional athletes end up financially struggling within 5 years of their peak earning. Not one catastrophic mistake, three very human patterns running simultaneously without any structure to interrupt them. Here's the question worth sitting with. Which of these three patterns are already present in your financial life right now? Not at 50 million, at whatever your current income is. Because here's what's important to understand. These patterns don't start at 50 million, they start wherever you are, and they scale with every increase in income, unless something changes first. In the next part of this conversation, we're going to talk about what that something is. Let's talk about the other side of this story, because for every athlete who loses everything, there are others who don't, who retire with more than they earned, who build something that outlasts their career, who, 20 years after their last game, are still financially secure. What did they do differently? It's tempting to say, they made better investments, or they had better advisors, or they were smarter with money. But here's what actually separates them. It's not the investment, it's the relationship with the money. Before any investment decision, before any advisor conversation, before any strategy, there's a decision that happens internally, a decision about what the money is for, not in the abstract, not financial security as a concept. Specifically, concretely, personally, the athletes who keep their money almost always have a clear answer to that question. This money is for my children's future. This money is for the day the sport ends. This money is for the life I want to build after the cameras stop. That clarity changes every decision that follows. It changes how they respond to the family member with a need, not with a cold no, but with a no that has a reason behind it, a reason they can articulate, a reason that feels more important than the discomfort of disappointing someone. It changes how they respond to the advisor with a product, not with blind trust, but with a question. How does this serve the specific thing I'm building? And if the answer isn't clear, the answer is no. It changes how they experience lifestyle inflation, not by avoiding it entirely, but by making it a conscious choice rather than an automatic response. I'm choosing to upgrade this. I'm choosing not to upgrade that because I know what the money is for. Here's what I want you to notice. None of this requires a financial advisor. None of it requires a sophisticated investment strategy. None of it requires a specific income level. It requires one thing: clarity about what the money is actually for. That sounds simple, almost too simple, but here's what happens without it. Without clarity, every decision about money gets made in the moment by whoever is asking, by whatever feels most urgent, by whatever the social pressure of the moment demands, and moment-by-moment decisions, without a framework underneath them, is exactly how 60% of professional athletes lose everything, one reasonable decision at a time. Here's the connection to your life. You don't need $50 million. for this lesson to apply. The same clarity that protects 50 million protects 5,000. The same absence of clarity that loses 50 million loses 5,000. The amount is different. The mechanism is identical. Let me go deeper on this idea of clarity, because I think it's worth understanding, not just what it is, but why it's so rare. Here's the honest answer. Most people have never been taught to think about money this way. We're taught to earn it. We're taught to save it. We're taught to spend it carefully, but we're almost never taught to decide what it's actually for before it arrives. And that sequence matters enormously when you decide what money is for. Before it arrives, you're making that decision from a calm place, a clear place, a place where social pressure isn't active, where lifestyle inflation hasn't started yet, where the advisor hasn't made their pitch. When you decide what money is for, after it arrives, you're making that decision in the middle of everything, in the middle of the excitement, in the middle of the pressure, in the middle of the opportunities and the requests and the noise, and decisions made in the middle of everything almost always favor the present, the immediate, the visible, over the future, the distant, the invisible. Here's what that looks like practically. Think about a professional footballer who signs their first major contract. The money hasn't arrived yet. In that moment, they have complete clarity. I want to take care of my family. I want to build something that lasts. I don't want to be one of those stories. That clarity is real. It's genuine. But then the money arrives, and with it, everything else arrives too. The requests, the opportunities, the lifestyle, the feeling that this is finally the moment to enjoy everything that was sacrificed, and that earlier clarity gets buried, not forgotten, buried, under the weight of the present moment. Here's what the athletes who kept their money did differently. They wrote it down, not metaphorically, literally. They created something external that held the clarity when the internal version got buried. A structure, a rule, a commitment, something that existed outside of the moment, so that when the moment arrived, with all its pressure and excitement and noise, the decision was already made, not in the moment before it. This is the same principle we've talked about in other conversations. Automation, structure, deciding in advance, but applied here, not to the mechanics of investing, to the philosophy underneath it. What is this money for? Answer that question clearly, write it down, and then build a structure that protects that answer from the pressure of the present moment. That's the difference. Not intelligence, not access, not a better advisor or a better investment. A decision made in advance and a structure that holds it when everything else is pulling in the other direction. Let me bring this closer to home, because everything we've discussed so far has been about professional athletes, $50 million contracts, World Cup prize money, numbers that feel distant from most people's reality. But here's what I want you to understand. The lesson isn't about the amount. The lesson is about the moment when more money arrives than you're currently used to managing. For a World Cup winner, that moment is a $50 million check. For most people, that moment looks different. A promotion that doubles your salary, a bonus that's larger than expected, an inheritance from someone you loved, a business that finally starts generating real income, a side income that grows beyond what you imagined. Every one of these is a version of the same moment, more money than before, and the same patterns that destroy professional athletes show up in these moments too, just with smaller numbers. Lifestyle inflation, the house that gets upgraded, the car that gets replaced, the subscriptions that multiply, the standard of living that rises to match the new income before any of it has a chance to build something. Social pressure, the family member who notices the raise, the friend who assumes you can cover this one, the colleague who suggests an investment opportunity, the pressure to be generous with money that hasn't yet become wealth, and the absence of clarity. No clear answer to the question, what is this additional money actually for? which means every decision about it gets made in the moment by whoever is asking, by whatever feels most urgent, and the money disappears. Not dramatically, not in one bad decision, gradually, quietly, one reasonable choice at a time, until the raise that was supposed to change things has been absorbed completely into a slightly more expensive version of the same financial life. Here's what's worth sitting with. How many times has this already happened? A raise that came and went, a bonus that didn't seem to leave a trace, a period of higher income that somehow didn't result in meaningfully more wealth, not because you were irresponsible, because the patterns were running without a structure to interrupt them. The same patterns that run for World Cup winners, just at a different scale. And here's the encouraging part. The structure that interrupts those patterns doesn't require $50 million to implement. It doesn't require a financial advisor. It doesn't require perfect discipline or perfect conditions or a perfect plan. It requires one decision made in advance, before the next raise arrives, before the next bonus lands, before the next version of more than before creates the same moment that has already passed, more times than you'd like to count. In the next part of this conversation, we're going to talk about exactly what that decision looks like and how to make it stick. Let's get practical, because the patterns we've described are only useful if you know what to do differently when the moment actually arrives. So let me walk you through what that looks like, not for a World Cup winner, for you. The next time more money arrives than you're used to, the first thing, and this sounds almost too simple, is to pause. Not forever, not indefinitely, just pause. Before any decision is made, before any upgrade is considered, before any request is answered, before any opportunity is evaluated. A deliberate pause, because here's what the pause does. It separates the arrival of the money from the decisions about the money, and that separation is where everything changes. Most people make their most expensive financial decisions in the first 30 days after money arrives. Not because they're impulsive, because the money feels most real, most exciting, most available in those first 30 days. And decisions made when money feels most available almost always favor the present. The pause interrupts that. It creates space between the feeling of abundance and the decisions that respond to it. The second thing, during that pause, answer the question we discussed. What is this money actually for? Not in general, specifically. Write it down. 3 sentences maximum. This money is for, and finish that sentence honestly, not with what sounds responsible, with what actually matters to you. Because here's the truth about financial structures. They only hold when what they're protecting matters more than what's pulling against them. A structure protecting something vague collapses under the first real pressure. A structure protecting something specific and personal holds, even when the pressure is significant. The third thing, redirect a percentage before anything else happens. Not after the lifestyle decisions, not after the social obligations, before a specific percentage. Automated if possible. Gone before the spending decisions begin. This is the same principle we've discussed before, but in this context, it has a specific application. When unexpected money arrives, the lifestyle hasn't adjusted to it yet, which means for a brief window, you can redirect a significant portion before the lifestyle expands to claim it. That window closes quickly, sometimes within weeks. The lifestyle adjusts, the new normal sets in, and the opportunity to redirect, without it feeling like sacrifice, passes. The World Cup winners who kept their money used that window. They redirected before the lifestyle could claim what arrived. Not all of it, but enough. Enough to build something real before the patterns had a chance to run. That window is available to you too. Every time more money arrives than before. The question is whether you use it or let it close. Let's talk about structure, because clarity alone isn't enough. You can be completely clear about what money is for and still lose it. because clarity is internal, and the pressures that erode money are external, constant, relentless, completely indifferent to what you decided in a quiet moment. Structure is what bridges the gap between what you decided when calm and what actually happens when everything is pulling in the other direction. Here's what structure looks like practically. It's not a spreadsheet. It's not a budget with 17 categories. It's not a complex investment portfolio that requires constant attention and ongoing decisions. Structure is simply a set of rules that run automatically without requiring your willpower to activate them every single time. Let me give you a concrete example. A professional footballer who wants to protect 50% of their earnings doesn't rely on deciding each month whether to protect 50%. They set up a system where 50% moves automatically the moment income arrives, before any other decision is possible, before the lifestyle can claim it, before the request can be considered, before the opportunity can be evaluated. It's already gone to where it's supposed to go. This isn't discipline. Discipline would mean deciding each month. This is structure. Structure means the decision was made once, and the system executes it every time without asking permission. Now here's how this applies to your life. You don't need 50%. You don't need to protect half of everything that arrives. You need a percentage. Whatever percentage you can commit to, honestly. 5%, 10%, 20%. The number matters less than the automaticity. Because here's what automatic does. That manual never can. Automatic runs during the hard months. The months when something unexpected came up. The months when the pressure was highest. The months when every other priority seemed more urgent than the future. Manual stops in those months. Automatic doesn't even notice them. It just continues, month after month, year after year, compounding quietly, while everything else fluctuates. Here's the second element of structure. A clear boundary around social obligations, not eliminating generosity, defining it, deciding in advance what you will and won't do with money that other people need, not reactively, not in the moment, in advance. Because in the moment, the human impulse toward generosity almost always wins, which is beautiful and financially dangerous without a boundary around it. The athletes who kept their money were not less generous than the ones who lost it. They were more deliberate about their generosity. They decided in advance what they would give and protected everything else from the pressure of the moment. That same deliberateness is available to anyone, at any income level, at any stage of life. The structure doesn't care about the amount, it only cares about the consistency. Let me tell you what changes. When this lesson actually lands, not intellectually, actually lands the way it lands, when you stop thinking about it as advice for athletes and start recognizing it in your own financial history. The first thing that changes is how you see the past. Most people look back at raises and bonuses and feel a vague sense of, where did that go? A promotion that came and went, a period of higher income, that didn't seem to leave a trace. After this conversation, that vague feeling gets a name. Lifestyle inflation, social pressure, absence of structure, 3 patterns that ran without anything to interrupt them, and naming something changes your relationship with it. What was invisible becomes visible. What felt like bad luck reveals itself as a pattern, and patterns can be interrupted. The second thing that changes is how you see the future, specifically, the next time more money arrives. Before this conversation, that moment would have unfolded the way it always has. The lifestyle adjustment, the social obligations, the gradual absorption of something that was supposed to change things. After this conversation, that moment looks different. Not because the pressures disappear, they don't, but because you see them coming. And seeing them coming gives you something you didn't have before, a choice, not a guaranteed outcome. a choice. The choice to pause, the choice to answer the question of what this money is actually for, the choice to redirect before the lifestyle claims it, the choice to build a structure. That holds your decision when everything else is pulling against it. That choice is the entire difference between the 60% who lose it and the ones who don't. Not talent, not intelligence, not access to better investments or better advisors. A choice made before the moment arrived, and a structure that protected it after it did. Here's what I find most interesting about this lesson. It comes from the most extreme version of the pattern: $50 million, World Cup champions. Stories that feel impossibly distant from most people's financial reality. And yet, the mechanism is identical. The amounts are different. The human patterns underneath are exactly the same, which means the solution is also exactly the same. Clarity about what the money is for. A pause before the decisions begin. A structure that runs automatically. A boundary around generosity that protects what needs to be protected. None of this requires $50 million. None of it requires a professional sports career. None of it requires anything that isn't already available to you right now. With whatever your current income is, with whatever the next raise or bonus looks like, with whatever version of more than before is coming your way. The lesson is free. The structure costs nothing to set up. The only thing required is the decision to use the window before it closes. If you're still here, I want to stop for a moment, because what we talked about today started with a number: $50 million, a World Cup Champions Prize, something that feels, from the outside, like the solution to every financial problem, and we ended up somewhere very different. Not talking about 50 million, talking about the patterns underneath it, the ones that run regardless of the amount, the ones that have probably already run in your own financial life, at whatever scale your income allowed. We talked about the 60%, the professional athletes who earned millions and lost it, not in one catastrophic decision, in three very human patterns running simultaneously without any structure to interrupt them. Lifestyle inflation, social pressure, absence of clarity. We talked about what the other 40% did differently, not better investments, not smarter decisions in the moment, a decision made before the moment about what the money was actually for, and a structure that held that decision when everything else was pulling against it. And we talked about what this means. For the next time more money arrives in your life, the raise, the bonus, the inheritance, whatever version of more than before is coming your way, the window that opens and closes before most people realize it was there. If something in this conversation landed differently, if you recognize something in your own history that you hadn't named before, I'd invite you to stay close to this channel. Subscribe, not for financial tips, not for investment advice, for conversations like this one, the kind that change how you see money before the next moment arrives. And share this with someone who just got a raise or is about to. Someone standing at the edge of that window without knowing it's there. This conversation might be the difference between using it and watching it close. And now, let me leave you with one final thought. Because everything we discussed today points to something simple, something that doesn't require a World Cup or a $50 million prize or any amount beyond what you already have. It only requires one question, answered honestly, before the next moment arrives. The question is simple: what is your money actually for? Not in general, not financial security as an abstraction, not retirement as a concept somewhere in the distant future. Specifically, personally, honestly, what is it for? Because here's what this conversation has really been about. Not World Cup prize money, not professional athletes, not $50 million. It's been about the moment when more arrives than before, and what happens in that moment determines everything that follows. For a World Cup champion, that moment is enormous. $50 million Cameras, celebration, the world watching. For most people, the moment is quieter, a number on a pay stub that's slightly higher, a deposit that lands differently than usual, a phone call with news that changes the math. But the moment is the same moment, and the patterns that run in that moment are the same patterns, regardless of the amount, regardless of the person, regardless of whether the world is watching or nobody knows but you. Here's what I want you to take from today. The 60% didn't lose their money because they were bad with money. They lost it because nobody taught them to answer the question before the moment arrived. And so the moment arrived, and the patterns ran, and the money followed the patterns, the way money always does. When there's nothing to redirect it, you now have something they didn't. Not a better investment strategy, not a financial advisor, not a spreadsheet or a system or a plan. A question, and the understanding of why answering it before the next moment arrives changes everything that happens after. So here's what I'd ask you to do, not today necessarily, but soon. Sit with that question. What is your money actually for? Write down the answer. 3 sentences, maybe less. And then, before the next raise comes, before the next bonus lands, before the next version of more than before creates the same moment that has already passed more times than you'd like, build something around that answer, a structure, however simple, that holds your decision when everything else is pulling against it. That's the $50 million lesson, available to anyone, at any income, at any stage of life, completely free, waiting to be used by whoever decides to answer the question before the moment arrives. If this conversation has been worth your time, share it with 5 people who are about to receive more than before and don't yet know what it's for. Leave a comment below. Tell me what your money is actually for, not what it should be for, what it actually is. Because the next conversation starts with what you need most. This is the bigger picture: money, wealth, and the life you're building. We'll see you in the next one.